I had a very successful reading month. Yeah, it was a pretty good month. Why don't we just start talking about the books? Okay. The first book I read this month was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries, and it is a reread for me. When I originally read this book, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite, and I feel like I felt the exact same when I reread it this time. Essentially, the series is about Murderbot, and he's trying to kind of figure some stuff out about his life, some missing memories, just, I don't know, just things, and he ends up in these terrible random situations. I listen to the audiobooks because they're short and I quite enjoy the narrator. My favorite thing about the series is some of the writing and also Murderbot themselves. I enjoy their character. Filming at my desk is a vibe, but it's a struggle. I'm surrounded by too many things right now. The next book I read was The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and Other Clinical Trials by Oliver Sacks. I kind of hate this book. I think I was expecting a lot because a lot of people really love Oliver Sacks, and I kind of didn't get that. I just got a psychology book. I don't know. I hate this book because I'm not particularly interested in Oliver Sacks and what he has to say. He's talking about a lot of stuff ahead of its time, but I feel like he's just another person who just didn't understand what was going on. I don't think he does necessarily anything profound. I know it was a different time, but I don't understand how you're going to be ableist and a psychologist. I'm not particularly taken by his writing either. It's just kind of whatever. The next book I read after that was Across a Field of Starlight by Blue Delinquency, which is a new release. It's a graphic novel about two friends who are across the galaxy from each other, but they've grown up as best friends, and both of them are like dealing with their own things. I really love the art style, and I love how it's a sci-fi featuring just like so many queer characters and just like a diverse cast. I like how it's not just fun, fresh sci-fi. I kind of like how there's an intensity to it. It had gotten intense at one point, and I was like, ooh, okay, the stakes are kind of high, which is kind of unexpected. Some of the decisions that the characters were making kind of frustrated me. This is a young adult book, so like naturally the kids, they're children. They're gonna act a bit like childish, or their decisions might not make complete sense sometimes. But it's a sci-fi young adult novel. How mad can I actually be? The next book I reread was Saga by... What am I doing? Okay, I already committed. Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, Volume 1. I reread this because I'm not quite remembering everything, so like I'm gonna reread them in physical format now that I own them all physically. Now I get to like rate them individually as opposed to like rating the compendium as a whole, because naturally I'm gonna rate those very highly. Like I think I gave them all like 4.5 and like 5 stars. But talking about this book specifically, I gave it 4 stars. I think it's a really, really good start to just such like a complex story. You know what I mean? Like it introduces everything very nicely. I mean, we get into it very quickly, and it's just interesting to re-meet all of these characters and see like where they were at the beginning, knowing like where they all end up. The next book I reread again was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells, the second book in the Murderbot Diaries, and honestly, this one I liked a lot less than, or not a lot less, I liked it a little bit less than when I originally read it. It does have a little bit more of a plot, but I think I just had a harder time connecting with the new characters in this one and connecting with the story, which I think is a problem I have with the series overall. It's just like, it's so short and quick, it's hard for me to get into it. You know, something else that was messed up, I didn't really love art as much as I did the first time. Like I feel like this AI had me cracking up the first time, but like this time I was kind of like, you know, it's okay. And then I went on vacation. Oh, that's a bug. Oh no. I went on vacation and for Pride Month, I rewarded myself, or not rewarded, but like, you know, I gifted, or I allowed myself to buy some gay books. And so before vacation, I decided I was going to read Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. She's very water damaged because I read her by the poolside, as one does. It gave me like Hallmark movie vibes, which is why originally I wasn't gonna read it, because I'm not really into that like city girl in a small town kind of thing. But it's gay, you know. This is about Delilah, who arrives back in her hometown from the Big Apple to photograph her sister's wedding, or her stepsister's wedding. She's never really had a relationship with her stepsister and stepmother, so it's kind of like not her favorite thing to be doing. But she accidentally runs into Claire. She accidentally runs into Claire, and they kind of have this secretive little fling going on. Like, they're not together, but they're like flirting with each other in secret. It's cute, you know. It's cute. It's exactly what I expected. I really love, I don't know why, but in rom-coms I really love weddings. I eat that up every single time. So obviously I was loving the kind of like wedding element of this, and then like going to the events and stuff like that. Delilah, I can't treat her better, but I can treat her right, okay? It was interesting to see how Delilah's perspective, despite it being her truth, still had a little bit of bias in it, and seeing like a lot of revelations about what her life actually was like as a child in perspective of like other people, such as Claire or Ingrid and whoever. And I think it just goes to show how like communication is like really important, and what it means to like emotionally close yourself off, and just like what that does to your relationships with the people around you. So I think there's a lot of interesting topics had like with that. It was cute. It was wedding. It was, I really loved it. You guys see my dog? Have you seen her staring at me? Hope was restored to me in reading, once again, by what I've now determined to be my all-time favorite book, ever and forever, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Rereading it, I was thinking, like, I haven't had that great of a success with many rereads I've had this year. I would really love a book, and then when I reread it, I would still really like it, but I feel like that same, like, first read momentum wasn't there anymore. But I feel like with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, I have a deeper appreciation for it, not in the way that I love the story more, but more so that I now understand how meaningful this book is to me. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous novel. Despite it having like this great plot, we focus on the characters. Okay, and this was like the most obviously character-driven novel that I had ever read. I got so paranoid. I was like so convinced, guys, that I wasn't recording. It was so interesting because I thought that wasn't something I would particularly be into. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm more of a plot girl. In this novel, we start off with Rosemary, who is arriving to the Wayfarer. She's trying to escape this old life that she had, and just all of this stuff that just surrounded her and overwhelmed her. And so now she's made a new life for herself, a new identity, and she's doing that by becoming like the secretary of the Wayfarer. And they end up getting this really big job it's just bigger than anything they've had before. And we follow them along on this journey to traveling across the entire galaxy. I really love like the format of it as well, and how we learn about these characters through different days on this journey. I love this book. It'll be my all-time favorite book forever. And the next book I read was Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This is the Illumicrate edition, which is very gorgeous. She's very gorgeous to me. Gallant is a young adult novel about a young girl who was abandoned by her mother, and she moves from this orphanage kind of situation into this house that's apparently that's from her distant family, because she gets an uncle from her letter. She gets a letter from her uncle that's like, you can move in with us, but when she arrives, let's just say stuff isn't as she expected it to be. This gives me the same vibes as The Night Gardener. This gives me the same vibes as Coraline. Like, it's just like very spooky and very fantastical. It was so atmospheric and I loved it. I love stories about creepy houses. I love atmospheric writing. I love spooky writing when it's tangent with a story that doesn't have like such high stakes. Like, I wouldn't say, I'm not undermining like what goes on in this book, but it just feels like a spooky, atmospheric middle grade novel. Next, I read The Queer Principles of Kit Webb by Cat Sebastian. Every time I would put this in like something that I would track my reading in, I would put Kit Webber, and I always made that mistake. I don't know why, despite me figuring out it was Kit Webb. But this is a historical romance about Kit is an ex-thief, very famous thief, and he runs a coffee shop. And Percy is this aristocrat who wants to steal something in a highway robbery from his father. And so he enlists Kit's help, but Kit's like, dude, I'm retired, I'm not gonna help you out, and I actually hate your kind, so get out. But you know, Percy, being the person that he is, does not give up. I really loved the chemistry between the two characters. There's just so many good moments, you know what I mean? Like, when a book just has moments that you could flip to and reread and like fangirl over. And I love this whole like thing going on with like historical romances featuring morally gray characters like thieves and people who want to steal, you know? It's kind of cozy as well because most of this is set in the coffee house because like that's where they train, that's where they plot, that's where their romance develops, and it's just so cozy because think about the fireplace, the coffee, the tea, the books. And then I read The Way of the Househusband Volume 2, which is a library hold that I feel like my library books are due today, but you know what, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I didn't love this one as much as the first one. I really wasn't into the stories as much as I was with the ones in the first one, and it wasn't really as funny to me. I did really love the last story though. It was so wholesome. And then I read The Promised Neverland Volume 5, which I think really revamps my love for the series. The last novel, I wasn't really feeling it, kind of just like slowed down for me, but this one, a lot of stuff was happening and I was like really into that stuff in terms of plot, so I think the plot really picks up in this one. Now we can talk about The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonora Reyes. But this is the other book I got when I was rewarding myself with a couple of gay books. This is a young adult coming-of-age novel just about a girl who goes to Catholic school with her brother. But she's trying to keep a straight persona at this school, so she can't really pursue anything. I really love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I just related to Yami a lot. And I really love how this is just one of those books that explicitly talks about what it wants to talk about, you know? Like, there are just paragraphs that talk about the lesbian experience, and I'm like, girl, yeah, I understand you. I totally understand you. And I love how there's discussions about that word, too. Like, somebody points out to Yami that she doesn't use the word lesbian when she describes herself, and Yami's like, that is something I need to dissect. And by the end of the novel, like, spoiler alert, she uses the word, which I just think is it's such a lovely thing to read about, like discovering yourself and like the biases that you have. It'll take you on a really big emotional roller coaster. Huge trigger warnings for homophobia naturally, and depression and suicide. I have Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. This was one of my favorite books a long time ago. Not a long time ago, it's been a few years, but I just really love this book, and I was really expecting to not love it as much. This is my 3rd time reading it, by the way, and guess what? She's still that girl. She really is. It's not a 5-star read like I thought before, but it's a 4.5-star read, which, you know, is enough. Dorothy Must Die is just about Amy, who gets swept up in a tornado, and she lands in Oz, obviously, and she sees that everything is not as she thinks it is. Wizard of Oz is like her favorite story ever, so you know, she knows something is off, and she ends up in this scheme to kill Dorothy with like the Order of the Wicked. Is that what they're called? The Revolutionary Order of the Wicked. I think the main thing about me for like the morbidness of this book is just the characters and just how twisted Danielle Page makes them. It might not be a hit for everybody, but it's one of my favorites, so that's all that matters. Finally, I reread As Dead as It Gets by Katie Allinger, which is the final book in the Bad Girls Don't Die trilogy, and a very nostalgic series for me. Realistically, this series is not good, but it's nostalgic, so I love it. Okay, and this is the only time I've reread it, so I've read the series twice now. It just reminds me of old YA paranormal spooky horror books. Essentially what the plot of the series is our main character Alexis gets caught up in this paranormal stuff that keeps following her, and in each book it's a different ghost, it's a different plot, but you know, it all connects in the way that Alexis is like, why does this happen to me? You know? And I'm gonna tell you right now, you never get the answer as to why all of this stuff is happening to her and the people around her, but you know, it leaves a bit of mystery. And this book ends in a very like open-ended, it's not a happy ending necessarily, but it is a happy ending for Alexis, and I think that was just so revolutionary for me, just how open-ended and unresolved so much stuff was, and it still made sense. Like, obviously that was revolutionary for me at the age of 10 years old, because everything ended with a bow tie at that point, and this was just something new. The girlies aren't doing it like this anymore. I don't know how I didn't realize that the camera got overheated, because it kept getting overheated when I filmed, but it's pretty obvious because it makes a sound. I don't recommend the series because, I mean, objectively it's not good, but for me personally, it was like memorable. It was nostalgic. It was like a bridge for me. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!